Why, hello. I was going to do this review of The End of Eternity by Isaac Asimov as a live stream discussion originally. I changed my mind. I'm just doing a video. So here we are. And reading this book, when I put it in my Goodreads list of books that I've read, I didn't even realize this, but I'm always looking for these coincidences and how one of the major themes of my channel has been about time travel and eternalism and things like that, fatalism. But as I put this into my Goodreads list, just two books back or so, an audiobook I read had a very similar, I listened to, had a very similar title, The End of Everything by Katie Mack. Totally different book. It's a modern astrophysics, cosmology type book, and pretty good, but it is current, whereas the Asimov book came out, I think, in 54, 55, somewhere around there. Very different books, but I just thought the title coincidences were very close to each other, and I didn't even realize it. I wasn't even thinking about it. But I guess I was thinking that once I've already experienced the end of everything in that book, how could the end of mere eternity compare? It's like a drip in the bucket of everything. My first impressions of this book was that it's very much like early Philip K. Dick, to my surprise. I wouldn't think that, like off the top of my head, that Asimov and Philip K. Dick could be similar. And by the time the 70s came around, they had gone in completely different directions. But at this time, early in Dick's career, Asimov had been writing for a while, but their styles aren't that dissimilar. They were both, I think, writing for magazines and probably had encountered each other, at least on the page, if not in person. So it was interesting to see that. I never would have made that association. Also, I found the beginning a bit clunky. The first chapter was kind of very heavy with exposition and just kind of clunky. But the further I got into the book, I found that this isn't really a novel of. You're not reading this for the great characters. You're not reading it for even the plot. You're reading it for the ideas, as with a lot of Asimov's fiction. It's just this comprehensive structure of the universe that he's thought out, which is pretty interesting. He kind of envisions time travel being more significant than space travel, so that people can actually trade between times, and there's this level of existence outside of time called eternity. It's kind of a fascinating structure, but I wasn't totally cool with all the exposition and stuff. It felt a little clunky. Basically, there are these guys who are kind of like time cops, outside of time, that once you introduce time travel, you create this, or actually whenever you enter any new dimensionality, be it time travel or, for example, the internet. 100 years ago, there were no computer viruses, obviously, but once you enter that domain, you create this space for such things to occur, new pathologies to occur. So with time travel, that's kind of what happened. There's these guys that have to make sure that time doesn't get out of whack. I was thinking a lot about the butterfly effect, in which like the kind of a pop concept that a butterfly, I think it was used in Jurassic Park, a butterfly flapping its wings a different way could just branch out into all these different things, that like time would just be altered completely, one little change. But according to Asimov, his idea is that no, there's this like inertia to time, that even you can change things quite a bit, but if you change too much, then you can get things out of whack. But there's in general this inertia. I think my understanding of science is that is not the case, like that things can be altered much more easily. And if one tiny thing changed in the past, we would all be different people, because like there wouldn't be like a different Adam Savage doing something else, like surfing at the beach right now. That's not how it works. There would be no Adam Savage. There would be a different person, because everything would have changed to some degree. So you can't like alter one molecule without altering the whole structure. There's a scene where this man and woman, they get drunk, and you kind of get the impression that Asimov has, one, never gotten drunk and never been horny. It's just it feels like so just doesn't feel right. There's an antiseptic quality similar to that other book I mentioned, The Naked Sun. It is where these people are kind of cut off and send projected holograms. But it's kind of like if you imagine if coronavirus had happened in the 1970s, there doesn't seem to be the concept of an internet connecting people. It's just like they communicate a little, but in general they just they watch their films and, you know, like they have these archives, but they don't like, there's not connection. Can you imagine how different the world would be if coronavirus had happened, say in the 1970s? Like how cut off people would be without video to connect each other. I imagine there'd be a lot more phone calls, but it's still, it's hard for me to even envision that situation. There's a heavy attitude of condescension in this book towards women, like the you know, very 1950s, like this girl. It's similar in Heinlein. You see that. It's almost like these guys could envision technological changes, but nobody can really anticipate social changes. Or I mean, I guess people started to do it more in the 60s, 70s authors, but at this point, things don't really change. It's just like this endless 1950s that extends centuries into the future. There are some interesting ideas about advertising, almost McLuhan-esque, and let me read you a little part. These advertisements, he had said, tell us more of primitive times than the so-called news articles in the same magazine. There was also a part almost probably about as postmodern as you're going to see in Asimov, in which he's talking about in the 20th century these people writing time travel stories, and he's kind of almost referring to himself in the process. It was vaguely amusing. I found the main character just kind of angry and annoying. So overall, this book, I didn't see a lot of great character development or drama, but the ideas were pretty cool. I guess historically, as an artifact of 1950s science fiction, it was interesting to me. It was pretty easy to read, flew along pretty well, and it was about what I expected. I kind of hoped it would be a little better, but I remember now that was never really Asimov's strength. He's not really about the novel, he's about the ideas. Just basically a place for him to throw all these ideas about possible societies. And they're really well structured. He thinks them out, but in terms of novels, maybe similar to Brave New World, which again, I don't feel is very successful as a novel. I don't care about the characters, but I think it's very good at showing technological innovations, better at showing how our social structures are going to change, how relationships will change and identities will change. His idea of like a drugged out future, orgies and all that seems like more accurate than Asimov's Perpetual 1950s, but you might like this if you like other Asimov or just 1950s science fiction. Things would change a lot in the 60s. Writers like Ursula K. Le Guin and Samuel R. Delany and other new wave science fiction and so on would change a lot of things. Social change, which we don't see earlier science fiction. So much early science fiction, like space operas, was just basically this machismo, how do you say that? Look at the future in terms of like the war culture that was from World War I and II, and then also from the continued lingering of corporate culture and mass production of the 1950s. So it wouldn't really be until the 60s that would start to crumble.